I want to share with you some of the books that have really transformed my life in the last few years. And it's a pretty high bar to clear to be able to say this book or that book really transformed my life. But when I think about it for myself, I think about the books that really led to a shift in being, a shift in paradigm for me, or books that really encapsulated a significant chapter, a significant transformation in my life at the time. And these are the books that, hypothetically, if I could, I would slip into my 20-year-old self's backpack or leave on his desk or on the corner of his bed or something. These books were a source of comfort in many cases, a source of wisdom, source of healing, source of discovery. I can go on. And I want to share them with you. Because honestly, reading these books probably do more than I can articulate on my own. So, the first book is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, if I'm pronouncing that right. And this book, I read it right around the time when I moved to New York City after graduating college. This is the summer of 2021. And I thought I was living out this dream of mine, of moving to New York City, starting my adult life, which was true and also not true. Reading this book at the time, before I really started actually working full time, this was still in the summer, it led me to question, is this dream actually mine? Is this what I actually want or what I should want? And when I read it back now, this book really planted a lot of seeds for me. It planted a lot of seeds that would later sprout when I started working full time that would help me realize that, hey, this isn't it. This isn't my dream. And I'll talk about this more, but one of the beautiful things about books, and a really powerful way of reading books, is to engage with them as if they are a living thing, to be in conversation with them as you would with someone else. So for my books, when I read them, I don't know if you can see, I will, like, hopefully that's visible, I will be in conversation with it. I'll read something that stirs me and I will write something in the margins, ask a question. And it's pretty powerful when I read this back now and I look at some of these annotations. And I can really see, I can really feel where I was at the time in my life, the doubts I was already having, as well as the yearnings. As an example, on page 26, there's this quote: "People learn early in their lives what is their reason for being," said the old man, with a certain bitterness. Maybe that's why they give up on it so early, too. But that's the way it is. And in this little section right there, I write, "I wonder if I've always known, but I genuinely love mentoring others by developing the one-on-one connection. Here I am now in 2025, and the path I'm on as a coach and facilitator is literally that, mentoring people, fostering one-on-one connection. Even this, recording videos, is a form of that. And this book, it really taught me how to dream again, honestly. It taught me to, I don't know if I can say taught, it helped me remember how to dream. And it gave me this certain faith and conviction that as long as I follow and stay true to my dreams, then everything will be okay. There's that famous quote that goes, I don't think I remember it, but it's like, if you really want something with all of your heart, then the entire universe will conspire with you to achieve it. And that's really the question. What is it that you really want deep down with all of your heart? And ask yourself, where is this coming from? Where am I experiencing this in myself? You might answer, and maybe there's a lot of energy here. It's like, oh, I want to, you know, earn money. I want to have a lot of opportunities, and I don't know, I want to live in the city. But what is the deeper want? What is that yearning that comes from a place that is not influenced by others? That's what our heads are. There's this warehouse of information from all these external sources that can really, really muddy our decision making. And some of these quotes that I want to share point to this. At that point in their lives, kids, everything is clear and everything is possible. They're not afraid to dream and to yearn for everything they would like to see happen to them in their lives. But as time passes, a mysterious force begins to convince them that it will be impossible for them to realize their personal legend. It's a force that appears to be negative, but actually shows you how to realize your personal legend. It prepares your spirit and your will, because there's one great truth on this planet. Whoever you are, or whatever it is that you do, when you really want to see, when you really want something, it's because that desire originated in the soul of the universe. It's your mission on Earth. And I can tell you now, a few years later, it's absolutely true. I had to be affected by this force to live a life that wasn't mine, to think I wanted these things like success and prestige in the conventional sense. But really, it is not at all what I wanted. What I really care about is connecting with people deeply, serving them, empowering them. That's what I really care about. And it was evident in that little margin note I read to you earlier. So after that, I wrote, I did not write. I read When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi. This is a memoir. This is, for different reasons I might talk about another time, my favorite book of all time, most influential book of all time. But this is a book that I read similarly right before I started working full time. That same summer I read The Alchemist. And it talks a lot about different themes like mortality, fulfillment, meaning, whatnot. And this book really led me to question, what does it mean to live? And this isn't a spoiler, but this book is about a neurosurgeon who finds out that he has terminal cancer just as he's reached the mountaintop, just as he's about to complete residency, just as he's about to really start his life in a sense. And here I was in a similar place. I felt like I had reached the proverbial mountaintops, in a sense, by landing this really prestigious job in finance in New York City. And it really felt like my life was beginning. But once I started that job, within like the first day, the first week, I was already questioning, is this it? And when I looked ahead to the future, a year, 2 years, five, 10, so on, it felt like my life had already ended in a sense. And this book really led me to question, right? What does it mean to live? What does it mean to live a meaningful and fulfilling life? Which is a question that we don't think about too often, especially not when we're young, not when we're starting our adult lives. I definitely wasn't asked this by anyone. And I can't imagine what would have happened if I was. If I'd come across this book earlier, or if someone asked me these questions. And once again, this is the power of books, is that they can stir something in you. They can be, they are a living, breathing thing that you can be in conversation with. If you really listen for the questions, then you'll hear your own answers, not the answers of someone else. It sounds pretty gruesome or morbid to think about mortality and death, but to think about death is to really think about how to live, and that's what this book really, really ingrained in me. And in a similar way, it brought up this question in me of, who am I? Who am I beyond this identity that I believe myself to have or to be? Because in death, no one thinks about what it is you do. No one cares that you were a neurosurgeon. No one cares that you're an investment banker or a lawyer or a scientist, a musician, whatever it is. Some people do, sure. But what people really care about is who you are. And who you are is not what you do, but it's this presence, this energy that people experience when they're with you. And it led me to think about, what is it that people will say about me when I'm long gone, when I'm not there? I made a entire video on this. I have like a written Notion document of how I answered this because I was journaling about it at the time, and I can link that or something. But this book really, yeah, it found me at a time when I really needed it, when I really needed to sit with these things and decide for myself how it is I want to live. So, there's a couple quotes that I want to share with you. Lying next to Lucy in the hospital bed, both of us crying, the CT scan images still glowing on the computer screen, that identity as a physician, my identity, no longer mattered. Will having a newborn distract from the time we have together? She asked. Don't you think saying goodbye to your child would make your death more painful? Wouldn't it be great if it did? I said. Lucy and I both felt that life wasn't about avoiding suffering. Life is suffering. We can't avoid it. The more we do, all we do is perpetuate suffering. There's absolutely no way we can avoid hurt, pain, and whatnot. Because if we do, we neuter ourselves from experiencing the other end of the spectrum, those highs that we crave and we yearn for, like being able to watch a child grow up or being able to share memories with your loved ones. You don't get the full extent of that unless you're willing to experience pain. Simply said. Yeah. Another book that really again, found me at the moment in my life I needed it was this one, Pathless Path by Paul Millard. And oh my, I have marked this book up. I don't know if you can tell, but if you just look at all like those are all the books marked pages. Like I annotate and just wrote so much in this book because this book is about a lot of things. It's about career, calling, success, default paths, aliveness, enoughness. And this book really led me to question what brings me alive. Because the author, this is his story about him pursuing the default paths in life, you know, get good grades, get good internships, get good jobs, go to good grad programs, make a bunch of money, so on and so forth. And that was the path I was on when I was working in investment banking. And I read this book right around the time I was actually contemplating leaving. I read this book around February of 2022, so actually 3 years ago now at this point. By then, I had already decided that I was going to leave investment banking and to actually create more space for what brings me alive and what I felt was like an expression of my purpose, which is making YouTube videos. But I didn't quite have the confidence or the courage to quit just then. I thought I would maybe stay for a year because that's what you hear, right? Don't leave under a year. It's not a good look or something. I was really struggling with that. I really didn't have anyone else apart from one of my close friends and coworkers who I could talk to this sort of stuff with, especially not someone who was older, who had been through this stuff and was having the same kind of questions and had come out the other side. And Paul, through this book, was that person for me. He affirmed that I wasn't crazy for wanting to leave this path behind, for wanting to do something radical, like starting a YouTube channel or making that my dream, or not making that my dream, was my dream at the time. And all these questions and conversations I was having with myself around, again, topics like fulfillment, success, money, prestige, all this stuff, which I was growing disillusioned by. Paul affirmed that I wasn't alone and helped stir the courage in me to take the leap of faith, to leave my job. I left it at the end of February, beginning of March, so a couple weeks after finishing this book, and to be on this path that I'm now on, years later, talking to you, and I can tell you that it has definitely been pathless. It has not been as straightforward as being on a default kind of check off the box kind of path. But I have never felt so alive, and I've had some of the most incredible experiences, incredible transformation the last few years of being on this path. And I want to share some quotes, but before I do, one thing I want to add is that being able to read Paul's story, it gave me permission, which is a really powerful thing. Because many people, myself included, we live our lives waiting for permission. Because we've been so used to needing to ask for it, we've been so ingrained by shoulds and expectations that we've lost any sense of agency and authenticity. And that first leap that you take, it's really scary because you are shifting how you've lived your entire life at this point. And sometimes you just need someone to tell you, it's okay. You're going to make it. You'll make it to the other side. So, this book was that for me. Paul was that for me. And it's cool, so I've actually met him in real life at this point. Pretty neat. But So, some quotes that stand out to me are, in sum, the goal of being on this path is being able to get to a state of being where I can spend almost all of my time helping, supporting, and inspiring others to do great things with their lives. This quote really resonated with me at the time because that's exactly how I wanted to live my life. And that's how I'm living my life now. I have a suspicion that a whole bunch of energy will get unlocked. I'll just start doing things and creating things and talking to people and going to places that I cannot fundamentally imagine right now. It will be that stuff that shapes my life going forward. I'm curious what else will show up. And yeah, 3 years later, and it's been exactly the case for me. So the last bits I want to add here is that, you know, I was at this place where I was really just questioning like the nature of work. Because again, we're told so many things, especially coming out of college, if that's the situation you're in, about how life should be, especially when it comes to work and career. And I had a really hard time accepting that. It seemed like no one else around me was questioning things or asking why or wanting more than just a higher paycheck or more exit opportunities or something. And this book, once again, affirmed that, yeah, it's okay. It's okay that work sucks. Because I was in this place that, of like, shaming myself into believing this was okay, like minimizing how I was feeling. I used to say things like, yeah, this sucks, but there would be like 1,000 people out the door who would line up for my job. That's true. That's totally true. And it's okay to be grateful. And it's also true that this sucks for me. So just being able to hear that it was okay from Paul was really affirming. So next, I don't have this book in physical copy. No Bad Parts by Richard Schwartz. This is a book about internal family systems therapy, which is a modality that honestly, yeah, it really shifted how I relate to myself and others. At a time when I really thought my healing had sort of plateaued, this emerged along with a school of coaching development that I'm in, Alethea, which utilizes parts work. Yeah. For a long time, I didn't realize just like how subtle my inner experience was. Just as I gave you that example with minimizing my emotions, it seems so natural, but now through parts where I can see that there's two parts here, a part that A feels like this sucks, but then subtly there's another part here that says, hey, you can't feel this way. Be grateful, which is this internalized voice I have from my childhood and how I was raised. And being able to relate to myself in that way and be like, oh, okay, there's a part that is feeling shame, or there's a part that's feeling angry, and there's another part that's feeling this way. It creates space for me to be able to relate to myself from a place of compassion and grace. Because otherwise, we get caught up in the muck of all these different voices that just sound and blend together into one, and we get stuck. And oftentimes, we're quite honestly violent towards ourselves, we're quite aggressive towards ourselves, and it's because of these parts. So, one thing I think that's really, and a question that is quite important from reading this book is, what do I judge in others? Because what you judge in others is a reflection of what you judge in yourself. And there's a part in you that is judging you for something, for being a certain way. And there's a part of you that has internalized the hurt of an experience that you want to avoid because it's painful. So, this book, yeah. If there's any book on healing I would recommend, it would be this one. It's a different paradigm of relating with yourself and others, and one I wish I had found earlier, quite honestly. But some quotes are, we often find that the harder we try to get rid of emotions and thoughts, the stronger they become. This is because parts, like people, fight back against being harmed or being shamed or exiled. How we relate in the inner world will be how we relate in the outer. If we can appreciate and have compassion for our parts, even for the ones we've considered to be enemies, we can do the same for people who resemble them. On the other hand, if we hate or disdain our parts, we'll do the same with anyone who reminds us of them. So not only are you cultivating more compassion and grace within yourself, those parts that you judge or shame or exile or whatever, but also for people who embody those qualities outwardly, the projections of your internal experience. Another book, also for context, I read that book last year in probably around April, May of 2024. The next book is, once again, don't have hard copy, but Let Your Life Speak by Parker Palmer, who's a Quaker educator. I read this book around, I think, 2024, beginning of 2024, when I was at this place in my life where, longer story, I was letting go of this dream I'd had of being a full-time YouTuber, creator. That's what I thought I was going to be for a while. That's what I was really holding on quite rigidly to. And having to surrender that and let go of that. And in its place, coaching, facilitation emerged. And around that time, I read Let Your Life Speak. And it is one of the most soulful and moving books I've read about, so many themes, but vocation, being true to yourself, calling, service, so on and so forth. And like, my challenge to anyone is to read this book and genuinely read and engage with it, not just cognitively, but in a fully embodied way, and not be moved by it in some way, to not have some sort of insight or realization or just conversation happen from it. I think a big thing from this book is affirming that when we listen to ourselves, our yearnings, that thing that brings us alive, what Parker Palmer calls the still small voice, that is us listening to this greater, if you want to call it, experience of the universe, the divine, God, whatever, speaking through us. A couple quotes are, vocation does not mean a goal that I pursue. It means a calling that I hear. Before I can tell my life what I want to do with it, I must listen to my life telling me who I am. I must listen for the truths and values at the heart of my own identity, not the standards by which I must live, but the standards by which I cannot help but live if I'm living my own life. I can't not do. And that's the question for you. What is it you can't not do? If you ask yourself this over and over again, I guarantee your life will change. Another quote, our deepest calling is to grow into our own authentic selfhood, whether or not it conforms to some image of who we ought to be. As we do so, we will not only find the joy that every human being seeks, we will also find our path of authentic service in the world. True vocation joins self in service, as Frederick Buechner asserts when he defines vocation as the place where your deepest gladness meets the world's deepest need. The thing that you enjoy, the thing that brings you alive, when that meets a need of the world, that is vocation, that is purpose. It's the thing that you would just do anyways that just so happens to naturally serve other people. And for myself, it's connecting with people one on one. I've been doing that my entire life, and it's all I really wanted. It's like the most enjoyable thing for me to connect with someone in a really meaningful and soulful way. And now being able to do it as a coach and a facilitator, it's like the best thing ever. The fact that I can be in this container with someone in this conversation, and I mean to be paid for it, but not in the sense that like it's about the money, but kind of bringing this back to what Paul said in the Pathless Path. But to me, it's just about being able to keep doing the thing. Like that's all money is. Can I keep doing the thing? Which I recognize is a privilege to say that, but that's what it is for me. So, and lastly, just sort of like a bonus, I'll include Inward and Clarity and Connection by Young Pueblo. These are the first books I started to read when I started reading poetry again, and I can imagine there will be a lot of haters on this sort of poetry, which I don't know what you'd call it, like New Age poetry or something. I think another example is like Rupi Kapoor or something. Yes, it's not like Mary Oliver or Herman Hesse or whatever, but in its simplicity is its beauty. Because when you can just put things in really simple and relatable terms, then that's able to move someone. It moved me because in the way that I engage with poetry, at least with these two, and as I've talked about with other books, is I would read this, maybe a page 2 or 3 in the morning, and then I would, with every single page, I would write about kind of like, oh, this book has been broken, but I would write about what was stirred in me. And this was just such an incredible way to engage with poetry, to be in conversation with it in a really vulnerable and intimate way that I wasn't quite used to being with myself, and additionally not with other people yet. And reading these books of poetry helped nurture that in me. For example, it's on page 3, and like, you think about it, hundreds of pages in all this conversation. I was never addicted to one thing. I was addicted to filling a void within myself with things other than my own love. And then I wrote in the margins, I thought a relationship could benefit me, my own subconscious trying to fill a need. In reality, I didn't know how to love myself. To be able to love oneself is a power that is immeasurable. If I had to sort of just summarize this collection of books, it's really about self-discovery. How can I be in deeper relationship with myself? How can I listen to what is absolutely, infallibly true within me? And how can I facilitate that? How can I get beneath all the noise that has been keeping me from listening to myself for all this time? And when I listen, when I question things and listen for my own answer, can I then go out and bring that forth in the world as an expression of the divine, of the universe, God, whatever it may be. So these are the books I would have loved to have come across all at once, ideally, but instead it happened to be that, again, I found them, they found me at the moment I needed to in my life. And it took a number of years. But if you're watching this video and you've come across this, then I'd encourage you to check these out if any of them are interesting to you. And just see what is alive for you, what stirs in you. Engage with them as you would with someone else. Be in conversation with them. And really all they are is just a mirror, an opportunity to be in this place of self-discovery. And the more you discover about yourself, the more you're able to bring that out into the world, and that's what's going to change your life. So, thank you for your time. I appreciate you. I'm grateful for you, and have a lovely rest of your day.